Under the roaring concrete belly of Interstate 110 inches Los Angeles, where headlights streak across the night like restless spirits, a 72-year-old woman kneels on a piece of cardboard as if it were holy ground. Her name is Evelyn Grace Carter. The wind is cruel tonight, sharp, metallic, carrying the distant sirens and the smell of car exhaust, but Evelyn doesn't flinch. She smooths the cardboard with trembling hands, the same way someone might smooth the sheets of a real bed. To her, this is a real bed. Her only bed. The last piece of dignity she has in a world that has long stopped noticing she exists. Before lying down, she does what she has done every night for years. She prays. Jesus, thank you for another day. I own nothing, but you own everything. If I don't wake up tomorrow morning, let it be in your arms. Cars thunder overhead. No one hears her whisper. No one except the one she is speaking to. Evelyn doesn't know it yet. But this fragile moment under a freeway, this prayer on a piece of cardboard, is about to ignite a miracle that will reach the entire world and make her richer than anyone ever imagined. To most people walking through downtown Los Angeles, Evelyn is just another shadow among thousands, another homeless figure curled near an overpass, another forgotten soul blending into the gray of the city. But if anyone ever paused long enough to look into her face, they'd see something startling. Her eyes still shine, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with a peace that makes no sense for someone who owns nothing. Every morning before sunrise, Evelyn wakes to the sound of traffic shaking the concrete above her head. She folds her cardboard carefully, a habit formed from years of protecting her only possession. She tucks it under her arm like someone carrying a briefcase to work. Then she walks. Slow, steady steps on aching knees. Past the alley where she gets water. Past the soup kitchen where lines form before dawn. Past people who pretend not to see her, and others who stare too long. She nods politely to all of them. "Good morning," she whispers. Most don't answer. Some scowl. A few glance away. Still, she smiles. Her routine is ample and painfully dignified. She checks the public trash bins outside office buildings, looking for anything salvageable: an apple core, a half sandwich, a bottle she can trade for coins. She never pushes, never begs aggressively. She waits her turn behind other homeless neighbors, even if it means getting nothing. Some mock her for it. There she is. A security guard once said, pointing, "The cardboard grandma." Others call her the praying lady, because they've seen her pause on street corners, close her eyes, and whisper blessings over people who hurry past her. What no one knows is that Evelyn carries something far heavier than her plastic bag of belongings. The memories of a life that once looked nothing like this. There was a team she had, a husband she adored, a home filled with music and hope, a future she believed would be simple and steady. There was a time she was surrounded by love instead of concrete pillars, and slept on a warm mattress instead of a freezer box she found behind a hardware store. But Los Angeles only knows the version of her that walks the streets now frail, gentle, polite, hungry, invisible. And yet, she refuses to let the world harden her heart. Every night she returns to the same spot under the freeway, spreads out her cardboard, and kneels to pray, not for herself, but for the city that has forgotten her. "Jesus, bless them," she whispers. "Bless every person who walks past me." Her voice trembles, but her faith does not. And while the world continues to overlook her, heaven is already moving. long before she slept under a freeway in Los Angeles, before cardboard became her bed and prayer became her shelter. Evelyn Grace Carter was a barefoot little girl running through the wheat fields of rural Ohio, a place so small it didn't appear on most maps. Her childhood home was a weathered one-story house with chipped white paint and a porch that creaked every time the wind passed through. Inside, everything smelled faintly of flour and laundry soap. The Carters didn't have much, but what they lacked in money, they made up for in love. Her father, Thomas Carter, was a factory worker who came home each night with grease under his nails and exhaustion etched into his shoulders. Yet, he always found the strength to lift Evelyn onto his knee and say, "You're my sunshine, kiddo. Don't you ever let this world dim your light." But the heart of the home was her mother, Mary Carter, a woman of quiet faith whose Bible sat permanently open on the kitchen table. She prayed over everything, the food they didn't always have enough of, the bills they weren't sure they could pay, and the future she knew would not always be kind to her daughter. Evelyn would watch her mother knead bread dough and say words she didn't fully understand. God's timing isn't like ours, honey. What feels slow to us is fast to Him. And what feels impossible to us is already done in heaven. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but these words would one day become the backbone of her survival. School was simple, church was small, and the world felt safe. Sundays were her favorite. Mary would braid Evelyn's hair, tie it with a blue ribbon, and walk with her down the gravel road to the tiny chapel where hymns echoed through wooden pews. Evelyn loved those hymns. They made her feel seen, known, loved. When she turned 18, life changed quickly. Her father passed away from a heart attack, sudden, devastating, and financially catastrophic. The factory job that kept the family afloat went silent. The insurance that was supposed to help never came. And without both parents' income, Evelyn had to grow up faster than any teenager should. She took a job at the local diner, saving every penny. She didn't dream of leaving Ohio for adventure or fame. She simply dreamed of building a life built on the same things her parents had given her: faith, honesty, love that doesn't quit. She didn't know it then, but that diner job would lead her to the man who would shape her life forever. A mechanic with oil-stained hands and the gentlest smile she had ever seen. His name was Daniel Carter, and meeting him would begin the most beautiful and most heartbreaking chapter of her life. Daniel Carter didn't look like the kind of man who would change a woman's life. He was quiet, soft-spoken, the type who wiped his boots before entering a room, even if no one asked him to. He worked long hours at the auto shop on Main Street, fixing engines for people who often couldn't afford the repairs. More than once, Evelyn saw him hand back a customer's keys and say, "Pay me next month," or the month after. "What matters is you get home safe." That gentleness drew her in like a magnet. They married in a small church with 12 guests, a borrowed dress, and a potluck reception behind the chapel. There was no honeymoon trip, no wedding photography, just two young souls who believed that love, faith, and hard work could build anything. For a while, they were right. Their first years together were sweet and simple. Daniel worked double shifts to save money. Evelyn took sewing classes at the community center, dreaming of opening her own small tailoring business one day. Their evenings were filled with quiet rituals, radio music, Daniel reading aloud from the newspaper, Evelyn stitching buttons back onto his shirts while he told her, "One day, honey, you'll have your own little shop with a big window that shows your beautiful dresses." But there was one dream they prayed for more than anything: A child. Year after year. They waited. Doctor visits drained their savings. Treatments offered hope, and then heartbreak. Churches prayed over them. Strangers told them to just relax, and it'll happen. It never did. Until, miraculously, it did. At 40 years old, long after they had given up, the test finally came back positive. Evelyn cried so hard she couldn't breathe. Daniel held her, laughing and sobbing at the same time. For 9 months, their little house was filled with joy. Daniel played classical music for the baby through an old radio. Evelyn sewed tiny yellow outfits because they didn't want to know the gender, girl or boy. Daniel always said, "We'll love this child the same." But love wasn't enough to save what came next. The delivery was supposed to be routine. It wasn't. An unexpected cord complication. A heartbeat lost too fast. Doctors moving, whispering, shaking their heads. When they handed Evelyn the baby, a perfect, silent child, she felt the world tilt beneath her. Daniel kissed the infant's forehead and whispered, "We'll call M. Michael." Like the archangel, he came to bless us, even if just for a moment. Evelyn held her son for only minutes, but those minutes would follow her for the rest of her life. Grief arrived like an unexpected winter, silent, heavy, and merciless. After baby Michael's funeral, the little house that once echoed with hope became unbearably quiet. Evelyn moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching the tiny yellow outfits she had sewn, running her fingers over the crib that still smelled of fresh paint, staring at the rocking chair Daniel had made by hand. She stopped cooking, stopped sewing. Sometimes she stopped speaking altogether. Daniel tried everything: soft words, gentle prayers, long walks through the fields. He held her through sleepless nights and whispered, "Honey, don't fade away. I still need you here." But her grief was a weight he couldn't lift for her. He could only sit beside her, waiting for the day she'd choose to try again. It took months, but eventually she did. One morning, Evelyn rose before sunrise, opened the curtains, and whispered, "Jesus, give me strength." She brushed her hair, tied on her apron, and began to sew baptism gowns for other families. Tiny white garments she held with reverence, imagining each stitch as a prayer for a child she would never raise. Just as the world began to regain color, tragedy struck again. Daniel started complaining of headaches, a dull ache at first, then something sharper, more sinister. At the garage, he dropped a wrench because his hand felt strange. Some days his vision blurred. Others, he couldn't remember conversations from the day before. Doctors initially blamed stress, but stress doesn't cause seizures. Stress doesn't cause a strong man to collapse in his own driveway. The MRI results arrived with a doctor's apology. A malignant brain tumor, large, aggressive, inoperable. 6 months. Maybe less. Evelyn felt the room spin. She clutched Daniel's arm, but he simply sighed and said, "Well, then we'll make every day count, won't we?" And they did. She became his caretaker, feeding him spoonfuls of soup when he couldn't hold utensils, reading him scripture when his eyes couldn't focus, singing hymns she hadn't sung since childhood. Some nights he would shake from pain, and she would cradle his head, whispering prayers through tears she tried to hide. Medical bills piled higher than the kitchen table. Savings disappeared. Their home was sold. Evelyn pawned her sewing machine, her wedding ring, even Daniel's handmade rocking chair. But love doesn't stop for debt. Daniel died in a crowded public hospital room during a rainstorm, Evelyn holding his hand as his breathing slowed. His final words were a whisper. "Thank you for loving me so well. Wait for me up there." And with that, the last person who called her home was gone. After Daniel's passing, life didn't collapse all at once. It crumbled slowly, like paint peeling from an old house quiet, unnoticed by anyone except the woman living inside it. Evelyn tried to rebuild. She rented a small studio apartment on the edge of town, took whatever jobs a woman in her late 60s could still do, cleaning offices, babysitting toddlers, packing takeout boxes at a diner. Her body ached every night, but she kept reminding herself, work is a blessing. Movement keeps grief from turning into stone. But grief has long arms. As medical bills kept arriving, as her diabetes worsened, as her age made employers choose younger, faster applicants, Evelyn found herself slipping through cracks she never knew existed. At 68, she was let go from her last job. At 69, she fell behind on rent. At 70, the eviction notice came with a sheriff's knock that still echoed in her dreams. She left her apartment with 2 plastic bags, one with clothes, one with memories. That first night on the streets was colder than anything she'd ever known. Not just the air, the loneliness, the way people looked past her as if homelessness were contagious. She slept behind a grocery store on flattened cardboard boxes from the recycling bin, her body curled tight against the wind. By morning, she had learned the first unwritten rule of the streets. Cardboard is gold. It shields you from the frozen concrete. It keeps the damp from seeping into your bones. It's portable, replaceable, and most importantly, yours. Weeks later, after being shuffled away from bus stops and storefronts, Evelyn found what would become her home, a quiet patch under the Interstate 110 overpass. It wasn't safe. Not really, but it was less hostile than other corners. The hum of traffic felt steady, almost comforting, like a mechanical lullaby for the forgotten. One night, while searching behind a home improvement store for anything useful, she spotted it. A large, clean, sturdy sheet of cardboard from a refrigerator box. It was thick, dry, wide enough for her whole body. She touched it like someone touches a gift they didn't expect. "This will do," she whispered. From that moment, the cardboard became her lifeline, her shelter, her last piece of dignity. Every morning, she folded it neatly under her arm. Every night, she laid it out like a sacred ritual. People in passing cars pointed. Teenagers laughed. A store clerk once shouted, "Hey, lady, that's not a home." But Evelyn wasn't ashamed. "This is temporary," she would say softly. "My real home is with Jesus." And somehow, even as the world mocked her, she never lost her gentleness. She prayed for the city that ignored her. She blessed people who avoided her. She forgave the ones who cursed her. Little did she know that her quiet kindness and that piece of cardboard were already being woven into a miracle that would soon shake the world awake. It happened on a Thursday morning, one of those crisp Los Angeles days when the sky looks painfully blue, as if mocking the ones who have nothing. Evelyn had just finished folding her cardboard, sliding it carefully under her arm, when she noticed something unusual under the overpass. City workers were power washing the sidewalks. Police officers stood in clusters. Volunteers set up tables draped with bright banners that read, L.A. Homeless Initiative, a new beginning. She blinked, confused. A beginning. For whom? Cameras arrived next, big ones, the kind used for televised events. Politicians in tailored suits stepped out of black SUVs. A local corporation brought a catering truck filled with pastries and sandwiches for the press, not for the homeless people standing nearby hoping for leftovers. Evelyn moved to the back of the crowd, instinctively trying to make herself smaller. She never wanted to be in anyone's way. A cheerful announcer tapped the microphone. Today, we showcase the city's progress in reducing homelessness. We are turning the tide. People clapped. Evelyn lowered her eyes. She wasn't part of the progress. She wasn't part of anything. She only hoped someone would hand out food once the cameras stopped rolling. Then came the woman, elegant, flawless, the kind of person who had never eaten a meal without a table in front of her. A donor's wife. Her perfume arrived before she did. Spotting Evelyn, clutching her cardboard, she forced a smile and lifted a fresh turkey sandwich from the catering table. "Oh, sweetheart," she said loudly, making sure cameras caught her generosity. "You must be starving." Evelyn's hands trembled with gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am. God bless you." But just as their fingers were about to meet, the woman let the sandwich slip from her perfectly manicured hand. It fell into a puddle of dirty water pooling near the curb. She shrugged dramatically. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy." Then, with deliberate cruelty, she ground her expensive heel into the sandwich. "But you're used to eating off the ground, right? It won't matter." The laughter was immediate, loud, merciless. A young intern filming the event snorted, "This is going viral." Evelyn froze. Shame burned her like fire. Not because of the food, she had eaten things far worse, but because a crowd of strangers was watching her humiliation as if it were entertainment. Slowly, carefully, she knelt. Her knees touched the cold pavement. Her fragile hands gathered the ruined sandwich piece by piece. She wiped the dirt off with the corner of her tattered dress, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." Nobody offered help. Nobody stopped the laughter. To them, she wasn't a person. She was scenery. But someone did see her. At the edge of the crowd, a reporter named Mark Johnson lowered his official camera and quietly lifted his phone. Something inside him cracked as he watched this woman, this gentle, quiet, invisible woman, choose dignity over despair. He hit record. He didn't know it yet, but that single decision would change Evelyn's life and shake the conscience of an entire nation. Mark Johnson had been a journalist for 35 years, long enough to become numb to most things. He had covered wildfires, shootings, political scandals, and tragedies that emptied entire towns. Once, he cried on the job. That was 20 years and one divorce ago. Since then, he had learned to keep his heart silent and his lens steady. But on that Thursday morning, under that cold Los Angeles overpass, something broke through the armor he didn't even realize he still wore. It wasn't the cruelty. He had seen cruelty before. It wasn't the laughter. He'd heard worse. It was Evelyn. The way she knelt slowly, with fragile grace. The way her hands trembled but never hesitated. The way she treated that ruined sandwich as if it were something sacred, something worth saving. Most of all, it was her face. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet sorrow and a strange, unexplainable peace that did not belong in a moment so humiliating. Who is she? The question rose inside him like a tide. He moved closer, keeping his phone steady as he recorded. He zoomed in, not to exploit her pain, but because he felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest. A conviction. A pull. When she finally stood, sandwich wrapped carefully in a napkin she found nearby, Evelyn whispered a faint, "Thank you, Jesus," as if grateful for something no one else could see. Mark felt his throat tighten. He closed the recording. He didn't approach her. Not yet. He knew instinctively that this moment wasn't about him, but it wasn't something he could walk away from either. That night, in his small apartment in Silver Lake, Mark sat in front of his laptop replaying the footage. Every time he watched Evelyn kneel, something raw and human resurfaced inside him. He opened a new post. His fingers hesitated above the keyboard. He wasn't interested in naming the politician or shaming the donor's wife. That wasn't the story. The story was her, the dignity, the humility, the strength no one had noticed until now. He typed, "Today, I witnessed a kind of greatness I've never seen in all my years in journalism. A homeless grandmother, humiliated in public, responded with more grace than I've ever seen from any leader or celebrity. If this doesn't touch your heart, I don't know what will." He attached the video. No fancy edits. No music. No filters. Just the truth. At 11:47 p.m., with only 860 followers across all platforms, he clicked post. He didn't expect anything. He turned off the lights, placed his phone on the nightstand, and went to bed. But the universe was already awake. And somewhere across the world, algorithms began to push the video into timelines, then into hearts, then into the center of a miracle that neither Mark nor Evelyn could have imagined. By sunrise, the world would no longer look away. It would be searching for the woman with the cardboard bed. Mark Johnson was still asleep when the miracle began. At 4:12 a.m., his phone buzzed once, then again, then relentlessly, so violently that it slid off his nightstand and clattered onto the floor. He woke with a jolt. Dozens of notifications, then hundreds, then thousands. His video, Evelyn's humiliation, her quiet dignity, her whispered prayer, had exploded across the internet like a spark falling into dry grass. By sunrise, the numbers were unreal. 2. 1 million views on TikTok. 3. 8 million on Instagram Reels. Nearly 1 million retweets on X. Facebook comments pouring in by the tens of thousands. But the numbers weren't what shook Mark. It was the messages. A teenage girl from Florida. "I haven't cried in 3 years. This broke me." Who is she? A firefighter from Chicago. "That woman has more courage than anyone I've ever met." A British grandmother. "She reminds me of my mother. I need to help her." A self-proclaimed atheist from Seattle. "I don't believe in God, but whatever faith this woman has, I want it." The hashtag number Cardboard Grandma climbed to the #own trending topic in the United States, then globally. Celebrities reposted the clip. Pastors preached about it. News anchors showed it live on morning programs. A Christian charity in Texas offered to pay for Evelyn's housing immediately. A tech billionaire wrote, "Find her. I'll match every donation." But there was one problem. No one knew her name. In the video, Evelyn's face was gentle but blurry. She was just a small figure kneeling under the overpass, humble, invisible, yet unforgettable. People searched everywhere. Volunteers walked the streets of downtown L.A. Homeless advocates shared the clip with outreach teams. Church groups prayed over the woman they called the Angel of I-110. Local news stations begged viewers, "If you know who this woman is, please contact us." Even the city government issued a statement, awkward and overly polished. "We wish to provide support for the individual featured in the recent viral video." Translation: We ignored her until the world started watching. Meanwhile, Evelyn had no idea. At that very moment, while millions of people were searching for her, she was sitting behind a grocery store, sipping water from a public spigot, humming an old hymn her mother taught her. She didn't know she was famous. She didn't know people were crying over her, being inspired by her, donating in her name. She didn't know she had touched the conscience of an entire country. But someone did know where she was. A street vendor, a security guard, a woman who occasionally gave her an apple, and one of them finally made the call that would change everything. By late afternoon, Mark Johnson, along with a small team of journalists, social workers, and a representative from a Christian foundation in Atlanta named Sarah Lee, gathered in a van heading toward Interstate 110. The hunt for Evelyn Grace Carter had begun. By the time the van reached the underpass of Interstate 110, the sun was already dipping into the horizon, turning the sky into a wash of gold and dusty pink. The roar of evening traffic echoed above like a restless heartbeat. Mark stepped out first. He wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe a crowd of reporters already there. Maybe nothing at all. But the moment he saw the familiar corner of the concrete support beam, he felt something rise in his chest. A strange mix of anticipation, dread, and reverence. "Please, let her be here." Sarah Lee followed him him, clutching a folder stuffed with donated gift cards, emergency housing vouchers, and printed messages from around the world. The others, 2 social workers and a cameraman, hung back respectfully. Then they saw it. A thin figure curled gently on a piece of cardboard, her plastic bag of belongings tucked beneath her head like a pillow. Her silver hair fell across her face in soft waves, illuminated by the flickering street lamp above. It was her. Evelyn. Mark felt his breath catch. He approached slowly, as if he were stepping into a sacred space. He knelt beside her, careful not to startle her, and softly said, "Ma'am?" "Excuse me, ma'am?" Evelyn stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy with sleep. When she saw the group of well-dressed strangers surrounding her, she immediately tried to sit up. "Oh, I'm sorry," she whispered, scrambling to fold her cardboard. "I didn't mean to be in anyone's way. I'll move. I can move." "No," Mark said, his voice breaking. "Please don't go. We came to find you." Evelyn froze. "To find me." Her brows knit in confusion. "Why?" Sarah stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. "Because, Evelyn, millions of people have seen what you did yesterday. And your kindness, your dignity, it has touched hearts all over the world." Mark pulled out his phone and pressed play. The video lit up the dark space beneath the freeway, the grainy footage of Evelyn kneeling, picking up the ruined sandwich with careful fingers, brushing off dirt, whispering her quiet prayer. Evelyn watched the screen in silence. Her hand trembled. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened as the crowd's cruelty echoed through the speakers. When the clip ended, a single tear slid down her cheek. "All those people," she murmured. "They saw me." "Not just saw you," Sarah said softly. "They saw your heart." And they want to help you. More help than you can imagine. Evelyn looked down at her cardboard, holding it tightly against her chest. I'm just an old woman who sleeps on the street. Mark shook his head. No. You're the woman who reminded the world what grace looks like. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt seen, truly seen. Not as a burden, not as a statistic, not as a shadow beneath a highway, but as a woman whose quiet faith had awakened something inside millions. She looked up at the strangers who came searching for her and whispered the only words she could manage. Thank you, Jesus, for sending them. The first night Evelyn spent off the streets didn't feel real. Sarah had arranged a room for her at a modest Christian shelter, clean sheets, a warm shower, a bowl of chicken soup waiting on the nightstand. Evelyn touched everything gently, as if afraid she might break it, imply, by existing near it. Are you sure this is for me? She whispered. Yes, Sarah smiled. You deserve rest. But before climbing into the bed, Evelyn knelt beside it, just as she had knelt on her cardboard for years. Thank you, Jesus, she murmured. I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you. And heaven was not done. The next morning, the world had moved again. The fundraiser Sarah created almost as an afterthought had reached an impossible number overnight. $4. 8 million. Then $6 million. Then $10 million. Donations from every corner of the globe. Messages from pastors, students, war veterans, CEOs, nurses, single mothers. Even a handwritten letter from a child in Nebraska. Miss Evelyn, you are brave. I gave my allowance because I want you to have a real bed. Evelyn cried the way someone cries when they have spent too many years holding everything in. That afternoon, a man in a Navy suit arrived at the shelter. He introduced himself as Jonathan Hayes, a Texas-born Christian entrepreneur who had built a chain of successful restaurants after growing up in poverty himself. I watched your video. Ms. Carter, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You have something I lost on my way to success, a purity of heart. I want to help you use this miracle the right way. He laid out a simple but world-shifting proposal. Let's build something lasting. A foundation. Not in my name, not in the city's name, in yours. Evelyn recoiled slightly. In my name? Oh, sir, I don't think I'm anyone important. Jonathan leaned forward. That's exactly why it should be you. Because people believe you. Because they saw God in you. Sarah nodded. Millions of people around the world want to give. Let's give them something sacred to give to. They drafted the mission together. The Cardboard Grace Foundation. Serving the homeless. Feeding the hungry. Healing the forgotten. Restoring dignity, one person at a time. Then Jonathan asked the question no one else had dared to ask. Evelyn, what do you want? A home. A car. Anything. She stared at her hands, wrinkled, fragile, holy. I want to help people like me, she said softly. But I want to remember where Jesus found me. She took a breath. So if it's all right, I'd like to sleep under the freeway one night a week. To pray for the people still there. Jonathan swallowed hard. That's the most beautiful condition I've ever heard. And just like that, the woman the world once ignored became the heart of a movement that would soon change thousands of lives, all because she refused to forget the cold concrete where her miracle began. Within weeks, The Cardboard Grace Foundation became one of the fastest-growing charitable movements in American history. Not because it had millions of dollars, not because influential people supported it, but because its story had a soul. Everywhere Evelyn went, people recognized her, the tiny woman with the silver hair and the cardboard tucked beneath her arm like a banner of faith. Yet Evelyn never acted like a celebrity. When cameras tried to follow her, she waved them away gently. When journalists asked for quotes, she redirected attention to the people still living under the bridges. "They are the important ones," she'd say. "I'm just someone God lifted so I could lift them." But one invitation she could not avoid arrived in a blue envelope with a golden seal. The White House wanted her to speak. A national address on homelessness and human dignity broadcast lived to millions. Evelyn trembled as she held the letter. "Why me?" she whispered. Sarah placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Because they heard your heart, and because no one explains dignity better than someone who lost everything except faith." The night of the event, Evelyn wore the same simple dress she had worn the day she'd been humiliated. She insisted on it. "This is who I was when God found me," she told the staffer, who suggested something more formal. The grand hall was filled with officials, pastors, doctors, celebrities, activists, people who had spent years debating solutions to poverty. But when Evelyn walked onto the stage carrying the old cardboard under her arm, a silence fell, so complete it felt like a prayer. She stood behind the podium, cleared her throat, and spoke without notes. "Good evening," she said softly. "My name is Evelyn Grace Carter. I am 73 years old, and for nearly 10 years this piece of cardboard was my bed." She lifted it gently. The camera zoomed in, but it was more than a bed. It was my church, my quiet place, my reminder that God still listened, even when no one else did. No politician had ever spoken to the nation like this. She didn't discuss economics or policies. She spoke of souls. When you walk past someone on the street, you're not passing a problem. You're passing a story, a heart, a child God still loves. And when we choose to look away, we lose something holy inside us. People began to cry, leaders, journalists, strangers watching from living rooms across America. Evelyn smiled gently. "I am not rich because of money. I am rich because Jesus never left me, not even on my coldest nights under a freeway." She placed her hand on the cardboard, "And if he can find me there, he can find anyone." When she finished, the entire hall rose to their feet. The applause lasted nearly 10 minutes. But Evelyn didn't hear applause. She heard something deeper, something sacred, a whisper in her heart. "Well done, my child." 5 years after the video that changed everything, Los Angeles looked different. Not perfect, not fixed, but softer, more aware, more human. The Cardboard Grace Foundation had opened shelters across California, partnered with churches in 22 states, and inspired more than 300,000 volunteers nationwide. In neighborhoods once known only for poverty, murals of Evelyn's cardboard bed had begun appearing, each painted with the same message: "Whoever gives without having, receives without measure." But the most extraordinary moment, the one the world would never forget, came on a chilly December evening. Evelyn had just finished visiting the newest shelter, where a single mother thanked her for helping her get off the streets. As Evelyn walked outside with Sarah and Jonathan, she paused, under the glow of the streetlights. "I want to go home," she whispered. They knew what she meant. Not the apartment the foundation had prepared for her. Not the office where she now made decisions that touched thousands, but the place where her miracle began. Under the freeway, they arrived at Interstate 110 near midnight. The cold wind swept beneath the concrete beams, carrying echoes of distant traffic. Evelyn knelt slowly, her joints aching, and spread her cardboard in the exact same spot where she once slept invisible to the world. She closed her eyes. "Thank you, Jesus, for letting me serve you this long." When she lay down, Sarah was about to speak, but something strange caught her attention. Lights, footsteps, hundreds of them. People were gathering quietly, reverently carrying their own pieces of cardboard. Former shelter residents, volunteers, church members, doctors, veterans, teenagers who'd been moved by her story, families from out of state. One by one, they laid their cardboard beside hers, not because they were homeless, but because they wanted to honor the woman who had shown them God's heart through suffering. Within minutes, the entire underpass was filled. A sea of cardboard. A sea of gratitude. Evelyn opened her eyes and gasped softly. "Oh my," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Jonathan knelt beside her. "Evelyn, they came because of you." She shook her head gently. "No, son. They came because of him." The crowd fell silent as Evelyn took Sarah's hand. "If tomorrow I wake up in heaven," she said with a peaceful smile, "tell everyone Jesus kept his promise. He never left me, not one single night." She closed her eyes, and in the quiet hum of the freeway above, surrounded by hundreds sleeping on cardboard in solidarity, Evelyn Grace Carter slipped peacefully into eternity, exactly where her journey had begun. When dawn rose over Los Angeles, the city awoke to the sight of thousands of people still lying on cardboard, praying, singing, holding candles. The news headlines would later call it, "The night America slept on cardboard." But those who had been there knew the truth. It was the night heaven walked under a freeway. Today, years after Evelyn Grace Carter took her final breath beneath the freeway where her miracle began, her cardboard lies protected behind glass at the United Nations. Not as a symbol of poverty, but as a symbol of what God can do with a heart that refuses to stop loving. Her foundation continues to serve tens of thousands every year. Children who once lived in tents now graduate from college. Families who used to sleep in cars now lead Bible studies at shelters. Doctors, pastors, counselors, and volunteers all say the same thing. Evelyn didn't just give hope. She restored the world's ability to see one another again. But the greatest part of her legacy is not written in statistics or carved into plaques. It lives in the ordinary miracles taking place every single day. A teenager sharing his lunch with a classmate, a businessman stopping to pray with someone on the sidewalk, a church opening its doors at midnight because someone had nowhere else to go, a mother teaching her children that kindness is never wasted. And somewhere tonight, under some bridge in America, someone is whispering the same prayer Evelyn once whispered. "Jesus, if no one else sees me, I know you do." And heaven whispers back, "I never lost sight of you." Because miracles don't always come as lightning or fire. Sometimes they come as a quiet old woman with a piece of cardboard molder, and the courage to believe that love is still worth giving. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that God still moves in the quiet places of our lives, please like this video so it can reach someone who desperately needs hope today. Share a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from so we can pray for you. And if you believe that miracles still happen, subscribe to Heaven Walks with Us. Every new subscription helps us continue bringing real stories of faith, grace, and the moments when heaven steps into ordinary lives. Thank you for being here. Heaven truly does walk with us.